It's time for Physician Family Finances, the show where physician moms and dads like you can get the answers and encouragement you need to turn a good earned income into great life outcomes for tomorrow and today.
Hello, physician moms and dads. I'm Nate Reineke, certified financial planner and primary advisor.
And I'm Chelsea Jones, also a certified financial planner and primary advisor here at Physician Family Financial Advisors.
So, Chelsea, every once in a while, I get people who tell me they like that like the podcast and everything, and it's always like a few years ago, nobody was listening to this thing, and now, and I try not to look at the downloads and all that because it's just like that's not why we're doing it, but it's nice when people say nice things. But here's the thing: we still don't get a ton of listener questions. I don't know what it is, but I know they're out there because we talk to, we have hundreds of physicians that we talk to every day. And I want to encourage everybody to ask questions. If you're just a listener, not a client, you can send questions to us. And I always ask at the end of the podcast. But last time I put out this request, we got a few listener questions that week instead of just like one or none. So if you are listening and you like the answers that Chelsea and I give, you want some feedback, then send us your questions. podcast@physicianfamily.com.
And you can always ask for a friend too. They don't have to be your questions.
There you go. Okay, speaking of, we have an asking for a friend question today. What is it, Chelsea?
Our asking for a friend question today is, how do I help my parents with managing their finances when I'm a novice myself?
So I think I've gotten this question 3 times this year. And reluctantly. One, not so reluctantly. I was like, I'm not asking for a friend, and I'm a novice, and I don't care. Please help. So it's been kind of a oddly like rewarding thing to help people's parents, because something to note here. Okay, I have no research to back this, nothing. I just have realized this over talking to physicians about their parents' finances. And what I have come to realize is that the reason your parents feel like they're no good at personal finance is because until their generation, depending on, I guess, the age of person we're listener today, before their generation, nobody really had to get good at personal finance. Like all you had to do,
right?
You had a pension. That's all it was. And so pensions have run dry. Many don't have them anymore. And for most of our listeners, your parents is the first generation that has had to decide what to do with their money without a pension. And before that, and until this point, everybody just knew I spend less than I bring in and I'll be okay. Okay. So this could, I mean, we could go on and on. There are 100 things you could teach them and you could research for them. But the number one thing that seems to bring, set you off like on the right foot is the really basic stuff. So what happens, at least from my experience, when I see aging parents, their situation changes and they are no longer in their comfortable, a comfortable place where they understand their expenses very well. Maybe they've been living for years without really watching their expenses because they just naturally spent less than they made. So now they're on the cusp of retirement and they don't know what to do. Before you get into getting some help or getting them a financial advisor or whatever, what investments they should choose, that is all sort of irrelevant or not helpful until they sit down, look at their expenses, and figure out how much they spend versus how much they have. And this is something that should bring them some peace, I guess, maybe, or maybe they'll find out that they're in rough shape and they need some help.
Yeah, it's definitely enlightening either way.
Either way, yeah. The other thing, though, is it forces you to sit at the table with them and them to show you their books.
Mm-hmm.
which that generation also is not usually all that comfortable with. So if your parents are struggling, they're asking for some help, the first thing to do is just to become aware of what's going on. And so, even if you are a novice, you know how to write down what expenses they have and write down where their money is and how much they have. Okay. Getting help with Social Security and what asset allocation to have and what product to buy if they need it, which all may be very different than the products you buy. You buying index funds and being really aggressive is probably really different than something that they may need to do. I have done this with families together, and sometimes the right answer is some product that you will never need. A physician that saves really well, they may never need an annuity, but
Mm-hmm.
somebody with $500,000 that spends $5,000 a month and is really worried about their money running out, it might be a better product for them, which is kind of blasphemous to say on this podcast, but they're in a different scenario than you sometimes.
Yes.
The other option, what I've seen more often than not, is they actually are doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have a great way to understand that they're doing fine. So maybe they've saved well and they just don't know how to turn their $1.5 million nest egg into an income. And if that's the case, and you can do, some very easy math, let's say you have $1.5 million. I'm pulling out a calculator if you can hear it, and you times that by 4%, which is the 4% rule. This is just really rough figures that you can do without showing them. That's
Yep.
$5,000 a month
Mm-hmm. Pre-tax. Important to remember
pre-tax.
that. But
And then it's just, what do I do with Social Security? How do I get my
mm-hmm.
my my federal sponsored benefits? Medicare, and uh, how much? What's the difference? So if they can take out $5,000 pre-tax and they have Social Security and they spend $5,000 a month, that at this point it's just find a professional to get the money invested correctly or
Mm-hmm.
optimally for you, and you have plenty, and it's okay. You're just living on a fixed income now. So that part you don't need to do. In fact, if you're a novice at this, you probably shouldn't do telling which product to
Like
buy.
what funds to buy.
Yeah, what funds to buy if they need some product you're not aware of. But just having them sit down and doing a new budget that they probably haven't done in 20 years tends to like start the conversation and bring clarity to their situation.
Yeah. And I, as the person on the team who works with the retirees, I
Mm-hmm.
can't stress enough how important it is to know your spending before you retire. Because unless you want to go back to work, you gotta, there's going to be limitations based on how much you have saved. So it's just really, really important piece of information to have.
Of course. Yeah. So you don't have to do it all here. Most people, I would consider, whether or not they know it or not, a novice at this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But every listener here is capable of writing down a budget for their parents, even if they don't want to do it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gaining clarity.
Yep. Okay. Well, our first regular listener question comes from a urologist in California. They said, I want to help my children either buy a house or get started with a new family. I'm considering gifting them somewhere around 100,000. How should I invest the money?
This is
What do you think?
yeah, this is something I'm hearing more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I'll get them. It's a tiny, I mean, you could barely see it if I put it out if I actually made it, it would be the smallest soapbox you could ever see. It's just
Yeah.
really small because I have the same worries for my children too. But
Mm-hmm.
I may have said this before, but I know it's tough out there to buy a house. I know it's tough out there to launch, but you graduating your child with no college debt, no student loans,
It's a game
and
changer.
raising them in a way that shows them that they got to earn and they have to work hard and it's going to be hard and life is hard. Like life is pain, right? They're going to have to go through that a little bit. And that is going to be more impactful than this gift. But nonetheless, if you have the resources, I'm off my little tiny soapbox now. If you have the resources and you're like, a nice little 100K starter to buy a house will give them a really nice leg up. And maybe you could even, maybe it's even selfish. Like, well, if they're not saving so much money to buy a house, maybe they could go on a vacation with me. So, okay, we'll make it selfish so that it's actually your goal and not theirs. Like if you want to do that, I think that's cool. And the investing the money reminds me a lot of a college fund. And here's why. Investing for retirement is it's a strange thing because you're investing for a goal, let's say at 62 years old, my favorite physician retirement age, 62 years old. But then you got to spend the money for like 30 years. So if you're spending the money for 30 years, you don't just take it all out of the stock market. It's got to last you 30 years. It's got to grow, right? College is totally different. You save for 18, you spend in 4.
Yep, every cent.
Every cent of it, probably a little bit more if you're
Yeah.
if you're like the rest of, the world that makes a nice budget and then when your child wants to go to more expensive school, you don't say no. So it's similar in that you have a time horizon, but the spending sequence is so fast that you're really just investing. The way you should structure your investment is to where you're being aggressive for a shorter time period and then quickly taking it out of the market. That's how it works for college. The only difference between this and college is that the time horizon's a little longer. So it's like if it's a undergrad degree, it would be 18 plus 4, right? So it's 4 extra years. And the spending sequence is a little shorter. It's all in 1 year, right? So if you wanted to invest this, it would be you could invest with the same strategy for college, just with a different time horizon. And most people, this isn't a prescription, it's just an observation. Most people invest aggressively up front for college and then slowly unwind kind of the stocks in their portfolio and their really heavy bonds and cash, even just a few years out from college. So if your child is just born, it wouldn't be a bad idea it would be reasonable to be 100, 90, 80, 70% stocks, a more aggressive portfolio. But then as you get closer and closer and you really want to have that money, you probably can't take risk with it anymore.
Yeah.
And
I
so
always
you
tell
want to be,
clients you don't want a market drop when you're writing a check.
yeah, right. You're hoping that market doesn't move as you're trying to cash your check. So
Yeah.
you want to avoid that. And depending on how tied you are to the goal, like the actual dollar amount, right? Because let's say you're like, I'm comfortable with writing a $90,000 check instead of 100, no matter what the market does. Well, that's fine. Or maybe you write an extra 10 out of your checking account. But if you really like, if you want to stay true to this goal and that's the money and you want it to be 100K, then a few years out from writing that check, the money needs to be taken out of the stock market so that you don't see a dip before you write it. I'm so curious to see how this will evolve because I think this stems from the housing market. It's really expensive to buy a house. It's just really expensive to live, usually in the metropolitan cities that a lot of doctors live in. So, but don't lose the like, don't take your eye off the ball with college with this. Is my main kind of side note.
Okay. Our next question is from a neurologist in Oklahoma. They said, we currently work at a university. This is actually a double doc family. So husband and wife both work at a university where they receive a generous retirement match and they have access to a non-governmental 457B. But they said that they have the option to switch to the physician group side, where they're still kind of affiliated with the university, but you're not technically employed by the university. So it's a private practice, or it's its own practice, where they would receive 457F contributions. So those are from the employer, a similar match percent when it's broken down percentage wise. They also get a non-governmental 457B and the option for the mega backdoor Roth. And they want to know if they should switch from the university to the physician group side.
This is an interesting question because a lot of times, while retirement contributions are part of the choice to like change jobs, it's not really the main driver. Location, like overall comp, what your kids are going to do is the main driver. But this is like, we're going to keep the same jobs. Benefits are different. What should we do?
Yeah, this is a very specific scenario because I started asking them all those questions. I was like, well, if you switch, do you get paid more? And they're like, nope, exactly the same. I'm like, well, do you get to work less? Do you is the culture going to be different? All of that. They're like, no, it's all the same. So this was truly just a benefits question for them.
Okay. So what do you
thought
think?
was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that is. Much. And it's very uncommon.
Yeah. Because there is no material change in their actual work life or their home work life as a result of this change or potential change, I should say, when they asked this question, the thing that seemed most alluring to them to switch is the option for that mega backdoor Roth, which again is post-tax contributions to your 401k or 403b that you can convert to Roth. And so whenever we started talking about it, and I found out that this truly is just a benefits question, I was like, in the long term, you don't want to give up your your governmental 457B, which is not subject to risk of forfeiture. There's no additional risk associated with having money in that account. You can transfer it, all the good things that people usually like about their 403b and 401k. You don't want to give that up for the possibility to do a mega backdoor Roth, because the mega backdoor Roth is for physicians and high earners secondary to maxing out your pre-tax contributions. So making the switch to the physician group side would be basically cutting their pre-tax contributions that they make in half, because they're going from 403b plus governmental 457 to a 401k plus a non-governmental 457, which we don't like the non-governmental ones. So we would just recommend putting money into the 401k in that scenario. So you're essentially cutting your pre-tax contribution maximum in half, times 2 spouses, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty large number. But you're also adding additional taxable income with that 457F, because that account vests for them. It would vest every 2 years. So any money that employer puts in, when it vests, it's paid to them as taxable income. So they're already high earners, and that money is just going to be taxed at their highest marginal rate.
That's okay. Man, that is, I think it would, you probably ran the math and that's the conclusion you came to, but it is interesting. A lot of people are very interested in mega backdoor Roths, which I feel like a lot of the times when we talk about Roth conversions or we talk about contributing to Roth, it almost seems like we don't like it. We love Roths. They're great, but we just love the tax arbitrage of contributing pre-tax now and then taking it out later. Everybody wants to eat their vegetables first and put money in a Roth, no matter the math. But it just doesn't work out that way. And back to the asking for a friend question. If your parents did know anything about money, they probably sang the praises of Roths your whole life. Just like my grandfather did this. And I remember talking to him about the people we serve, physicians, and their situation, Roth versus traditional, and he could not even fathom that. He just shook his head. No, Roth always better. Roth good. And you're like, good. You're like, yes, it is good, but imagine Grandpa, who probably paid no more than 20% in taxes a year his whole life. Imagine someone paid 40 or 50% in taxes, and he just shook his head. No, Roth better. So
cue that scene from The Notebook where she's like, "It's not that simple."
Yeah, yeah.
She's screaming at him.
That's right. Yeah. So, and maybe you could tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something here.
Mm-hmm.
There's no telling whether or not the university will eventually offer backdoor Roth, or I'm sorry, mega
Yeah,
backdoor Roth.
the mega
So
backdoor Roth. Yeah.
yeah, take your tax break now. And more income from the 457F, assuming that's part, like if you're looking at this as total benefit versus total benefit, and if they're the same, but one includes a 457F, you're saying more income, more taxes, but it's really just I can get money into this Roth. Probably not a great decision if you have this great benefit of the governmental 457.
Yes.
So save your taxes.
Save your taxes. Okay, so the next question comes from a double doc family in Virginia. They said, we have about 12 months of living expenses set aside for our emergency fund. Is this too much?
Yeah. Of course, it always depends, Chelsea. But
Mm-hmm.
let me tell you what it depends on. Okay. Doctors normally use their emergency fund for three things. This is what they normally use it on. Because unlike the average person, usually when your car breaks down, you just fix it. Like I have yet to meet a doctor who had to pull from their emergency fund for a $3,000 fix on their car.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, normally at that point, they're just looking at buying another car. Right.
Yeah.
So you don't really use it for that. Even the things that the average person might use their emergency fund on, like a roof, is never
Mm-hmm.
more expensive than these three things I'm about to say. So these three things cover the typical what you would think of as an emergency. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It covers a hospital bill. Your the out of pocket maximum on your health insurance. It is more than those things. So the three things that I see physicians actually need their emergency fund for, like the whole thing, would
Mm-hmm.
be disability, like they go on disability, taxes, or some form of job loss or job change. Okay. So let's look at each one of those. Disability insurance, usually it is you have to wait 90 days to start getting paid. And then, or to start getting your benefit. Then you have to wait another 30 days after you're eligible. So you have an elimination period that's 90 days. You wait another 30 days and you start getting a check. It's like a job where on the first day on the job, you don't get paid. So
Mm-hmm.
that's 4 months. Okay. Now, if you have short term disability, it covers you in between. And the only issue would be if you didn't have enough coverage to like cover your bills. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing your personal finances right, you're as a physician, you're gonna get disability insurance that covers your bills and your saving. So
Mm-hmm.
once you get that, you may make less, but you should have enough to cover your
Yeah.
bills and to save. Then there's taxes. If you are a W-2 physician, most people don't have a big giant tax bill in excess of 4 months of expenses. That might be $50,000. They don't have an excess of $50,000 tax bill if you're a W-2 employee. Unless maybe it's the first year and there's like that whoopsie year where you filled out your tax
Mm-hmm.
forms wrong. But beyond
Yeah.
that, if you own your own practice or you're a 1099, that tax bill it can be ridiculous. So
Yeah.
really, the right way to do this is to get a decent tax preparer or accountant, make sure you're making your quarterly payments so you don't have this
Mm-hmm.
emergency. Okay. But even that, usually if you're off, like if you have a good tax person and you're off on your tax bill, it's not going to be in excess of 4 months of your expenses. The next one, it would be job loss or job change for some reason, or you had to get out of town and you need to get re-credentialed.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that can take a year. Most often it takes a couple months, But you have to look at your own specialty, your own situation, and make a real decision about how long it's going to take to get up and running again. So, to answer this question, if you're in category number 3, where it takes 12 months to get recredentialed, it's not too much of an emergency fund. For most people, though, an emergency fund is directly aimed at disability, which is about 4 months. And most of the time, when we're talking about emergency funds, people will hear 4 months, and let's say they spend $15,000 a month, and I say your emergency fund should be $60,000. They're mostly comfortable with that. But if for some reason that just makes you totally uncomfortable because, Nate, the rule of thumb is 6 months. Okay, fine, 6 months. But you don't need it, and it's just sitting there quite literally losing value because inflation is going to eat it alive. Okay. So I would say that 1 year is very uncommon, and that the only legitimate reason I've seen to do it is if it takes a long time for you to get credentialed, and that most physicians, 4 months is good. 6 months makes them feel comfortable. Therefore, if you have a 12 months emergency fund, you have probably near 6 figures of money that is just not serving you. It is not getting you any closer to the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. You could front load college. You could put more in retirement. You could you do a lot of things with 6 figures of after-tax money. So usually it is too much. Maybe it's a little different for you. But what I know, if you have extra money, if you do this exercise, and you remember, like, the typical emergencies aren't going to be 6 months of expenses or 4 months expenses, then you can decide, like, any short-term cash needs that you have. So, maybe we need a new car soon. Maybe we need a vacation fund, because something I see a lot, and I think this is a mistake, is people make a really beefy emergency fund, and then they think, but when I need that new car, it's going to be for that. But then you just lose the thread with what your cash is supposed to be doing for you. You don't know what it's for. Maybe you shouldn't invest this money. Maybe you should put it in a car fund, but you should separate them out so you have clarity about what this money's for. And then when you know how much extra money you have, then you can make more progress on some goals, or maybe have more aggressive goals. You might find out that with this money you've been putting in an emergency fund for no reason, you could retire a little earlier or spend more. So that's the exercise. I don't think for most people, especially a double doctor family, that they're going to be in a situation where they can't pay their bills for 12 months.
Yeah, that makes sense. So our last question here is from an orthopedic surgeon in Kentucky. They said, we're in our mid-30s. We make $800,000 per year and max out all of the accounts we hear you normally recommend. So that's going to be workplace retirement account, backdoor Roth, and HSA are usually hits the baseline. We also have approximately $5,000 to $8,000 a month, which we have been putting into a taxable account. My group is opening up a cash balance plan, and the current tax savings are really tempting with regards to the extra amount I have to invest, which in this case would be that $5,000 to $8,000 a month. Would it be best to continue putting it all into a taxable account, put some into taxable and some into the cash balance plan, or put all of it into the cash balance plan? So this is a great question. It's a question that I've gotten many times before, and it's basically, it boils down to, should I put money in a taxable account or should I put it in a cash balance plan? And it's always when I get this question, the real underlying question is, like, is the tax break that I get now worth the low investment return?
Because in a cash balance plan, it's pre-tax, but the way that they're structured is usually generally you can expect a lower return.
Yeah,
On your
3 to 5% is usually the credit
that's
rate
what
that I
they
see.
aim for.
Yeah. And I've done math on this to see, like, when does it make sense? Because in general, the older you are, the closer you are to retirement, the more the cash balance plan makes sense. because there's a shorter time horizon for that money to grow at a higher rate in a taxable account, and outpace the tax break that you got. And when I did the math previously, and I calculated kind of the break even point, like when does the cash balance plan start to make sense more in terms of how old you are? It usually is somewhere around mid to late 30s. And when you're earning 800,000 per year, you're in the highest marginal federal tax rate. And if your state has a tax, which Kentucky does, you're paying the highest rate for that. I think Kentucky has a flat rate, but you're paying at the highest level on all levels at that income amount. And so if we're talking about, which one is better tax wise, especially as you get into your 40s, the cash balance plan is going to make more sense. But there are other factors that you have to consider, right? When does this person want to retire? Do they want to retire in their 50s? Or do they want to retire kind of closer to an average age of 62, our favorite age?
Yeah.
If you want to retire earlier, taxable account makes sense, because if your money's tied up in qualified accounts only, it's going to be hard to access that money if you're retiring younger. So while there is a larger tax benefit, usually there's less flexibility when it comes to when you could use it. So those are all things to consider. But
did you mention to I may have missed this, but did you mention sometimes you only have one chance to get into these cash balance plans?
Yeah, sometimes there's one chance. If you don't enroll right now, you can't enroll later. Some plans will have multiple windows for you to enroll. And so
if you only have one chance, usually people are happier with kind of riding the fence and joining, but contributing the minimum amount in your younger years. But at the end of the day, it seems like so the math that we described, like the rate of return, we don't know what rate of return you're going to get. And so doing a little bit of both seems to minimize regret for people. But when you're asking Chelsea or I this question, we're just thinking strictly risk return. And so that's not everything. And how comfortable you are with each decision and the value of each account. So like you said, the brokerage account has a value beyond tax benefits. Like it's not just a tax question. But yeah, I think the older you are, the closer you are to retirement, cash balance plans make the most sense. But you're going to have, I can almost certainly say you will be really happy to have this super flexible brokerage account to work with if you're funding that too. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Probably shouldn't be in your 30s. But as you get closer and closer to retirement and flexibility becomes less valuable to you and a steady return becomes more valuable to you, the cash balance plan seems to make more sense. Okay. Is that it for today?
Yep. That's all the questions
all right.
for today.
Thank you everybody for listening. If you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe. And like I said at the top of the show, you can send us questions at podcast@physicianfamily.com. We will answer your question whether or not it makes it on the episode or not. I did that this week. Last week, we got 2 questions about the Trump account. I answered one by email, and then the other one I took on the podcast. So sometimes it's not even that the question wasn't good. It's just that it was a duplicate. But we will make sure to answer your questions and give you our time and energy to the best of our ability. If you are, a listener and you want some thoughts on our end. Remember, until next time, you're not just making a living, you're making a living.
Are you ready to turn worries about taxes and investing into a plan for college and retirement? If you're evaluating your options and want to learn more, visit physicianfamily.com and click Get Started. Or you can ask a question of your own by emailing podcast@physicianfamily.com. See marketing disclosures at physicianfamily.com/disclosures.